I've called this talk, What Does Your Seed Create? And hopefully this is more of a reflective talk, a meditative talk, meaning it's an invitation to reflect deeper than the intellect as you listen, in hopes that we discover or taste some internal truths for ourselves, each one of us, in our own experience. So this is all about trying to discover what our seed creates. And I've put here in the subheading that it's about the hidden power of sexual transformation, sexual transmutation, the primal depths of this root creative life force energy that we all have. That is very difficult to explain, that nobody talks about, but it is the most influential energy in each person and in humanity and in all of nature and in all of the universe. However, it's not just sexual. Our sexuality is connected to our entire being. So we don't just have to work from down up, but also work in harmony from up down. Looking at the most superficial aspects of our intellect, going into our emotions, our instincts, our sexuality. But then also our sexuality it doesn't just stop there. Sexuality and sex is that's not just the root reality. It's still a subtle energy. It's still physical, but it's more subtle. That's why we relate it to the vital or etheric body. Beyond that subtle energy, we go deeper into spiritual dimensions, right? So this sexual energy is the bridge which connects us from the physical to the spiritual. Just as when a baby is made, there is a certain sexual energy in order to bring that baby into this dimension. And the baby has this umbilical cord coming from its sacral chakra, right? But beyond this etheric energy is also the astral body, the mental body, the causal body, the consciousness, the deeper consciousness, the soul, aspects of divinity, the divine mother, the divine father, the absolute nothingness. So, first of all, what is the seed? Because although this sounds sexual, if you're familiar with the Gnostic teachings, it also goes deeper than that, as I've just explained. So the seed, in more of a fundamental view or understanding, is our essence. The entirety of our essence, which is also called the consciousness. Our entire consciousness. So the seed, which is our essence, is the embryo of our soul. It's the embryo. So to have precise understanding of this, why we introduce this word, the seed, is to start to understand that our consciousness, which we can get in touch with now by observing our awareness, to be aware of our awareness, that consciousness and the intelligence that comes with it, in the beginning right now, for all of us, is more of in a state of being a seed. So humanity is all like little seeds. we're not awakened, we're not at one with the absolute infinite bliss from moment to moment, full of clairvoyance and knowledge of all the cosmos. We're just a seed, that's all. A seed. And in this sense, because the seed hasn't quite sprouted yet, we don't have a soul yet. We have an embryo of a soul. So this embryo, this soul, needs to be nourished and awakened and grown. That's the purpose of why we have life, why we're born into this life. So in these teachings, the most profound level of nourishing our seed, our consciousness, is to water it with the sexual energy. In other words, the teachings of sexual transmutation. This is also to create the second birth. There is an organized religious movement, right, called Born Again. They don't understand these teachings, but here we understand that this is a literal, internal, and sexual, spiritual unfoldment of our consciousness. So this is why Jesus said, "With patience ye shall possess thy souls." We do not have our souls yet. Our soul is in a sleeping seed state. So our soul needs to be, or our seed needs to be watered with sexual transmutation or alchemy. There needs to be this electricity to awaken it, to give it life. This seed, this life force, which enters through us, through the cosmos, as this subtle, powerful, influential energy that affects our heart, our mind. You know, no matter what we study intellectually, we all have these primal, instinctive drives. It doesn't matter how committed a man is to a certain purpose. Once the woman of the love of his life appears, he'll do anything for her, right? He'll renounce everything and travel across the world to see her and be with her, right? This is a powerful energy. And it's not a dirty energy as people, let's say, mainstream consciousness seems to presume, but it is, in its essence, in purity, it is a sacred and divine energy. An energy that connects us to the being. So, the sperm, we would say in men, or the semen in women, is the sexual energy. But, as said in the beginning, it's not exactly the energy. That's more of a superficial or material understanding of sexual energy. Sexual energy is not merely matter, but it derives from the spiritual dimension. It is creative energy, right? In the beginning was the Word, right? And the Word was God. And that applies to us as individuals internally. How we create our world, our internal and external world, the blueprints of our soul and our life and our karma is all inside the seed. That's very profound to understand and experience in practice while walking the path of Gnosis. Extremely profound. It's very rare for someone to understand this. Right, so we're talking about a very deep topic here. So the Latin word semen derives from serere, which means to sow. Okay, so a little reflection here. To ask yourself, to self-reflect, what is the state of your seed? And maybe you might have some superficial judgments arrive at first in your mind, but if you be patient, compassionate, and still, you might get some other answers. The world has taught us to be very judgmental about our own seed and sexuality. But of course, I'm not just talking about the seed and I'm not just talking about sex and sexuality, right? I'm talking about also your essence. But when we reflect, we can also reflect on how our essence relates to our seed, right? A very angry person will have a certain type of seed. A very lustful person will have a certain type of seed. A very calm and patient person will also have another type of seed. So we can reflect what are our deepest desires, not just with a person, but with the world, with ourselves, our relationship to the world, right? Are we innocent? Is our seed still quite sleeping? We haven't done a lot of spiritual practice, self-reflection. We haven't questioned our reality. Why are we here? Why am I here? Why am I existing? Where am I going? For what purpose do I live for? Right? Maybe we haven't asked these questions deep enough yet. So our seed is still quite in a closed state, a closed and hard shell. Is our seed corrupted? And so maybe you can start to imagine, what would you be like if there wasn't all of this sleeping state of the seed of our essence? Or what would you be like if that corruption didn't exist? And that gives us clues as to how we would be, what our level of being would be, if we really practice transmutation in every level of our being, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, sexually. So just some other reflections here. This seed, this essence of ourselves, our consciousness as a whole, contains our egos. Right? So remember that egos have consciousness. Our seed is taken over by our egos. That's why it is a seed. There's only a small amount of essence, which you could sort of see here in this image. There's only a small amount of light coming from the seed, trying to escape, putting its connection with its being and divinity and reaching out, but it can't quite crack open. It has a hard shell, right? So the egos have taken over the seed, the essence. It is a contaminated type of essence, an adulterated essence, an essence that does not fit in with reality. It does not align with reality. There are also disguised vices that keep the essence hard, keep the shell hard. These vices could be anything that we think is good, but actually it's still keeping us quite asleep. In the most deepest aspect of that, we could say it's thinking, right? Many addictions, or most addictions, first start with thinking. They're not even disguised vices, but they're invisible vices. It's the matrix world that we uphold unconsciously. Unconscious presumptions about life and reality. And we have bottled up virtues. So when the egos dissolve and the vices are removed, then we have virtues. When a person actually stops being lazy, then they naturally, without effort, already acquire the virtue of diligence. When a person stops being lustful, they acquire the virtue of chastity and purity and love. When a person removes the anger, they become serene and peaceful. So, a little reflection here. What is the state of your seed? Your seed as you, as a seed of consciousness. And can that consciousness, if you bring it into the water of birth, of sexual birth, will it sprout? Will it give you life? Imagine yourself as this seed, the seed that you are now, and put yourself into fire and water. Right? Man is made up of fire and water. And God breathes life into it. What would it sprout? What would it create? What would be born? Right? And most of the time, if the seed is too contaminated, it won't be born. Or if it does sprout, if something is born, it might not be the most beautiful thing, let's say. Okay, so I'm talking a little bit mystically here, but we're working with our imagination and reflection. So all of us are seeds that long to become a tree, the tree of life from Kabbalah, which represents the fully developed human being, made into the image of creation, right? Made into God, made into the Elohim, right? In the beginning, the Elohim created the world. Elohim meaning gods and goddesses, a literal translation. So that's why we're here, right? In this group, studying, asking ourselves why we're here, where do we go, what do we do? Because we sense and we urge ourselves deep in our soul that we want to become something. We know, all of us know this. We have this Gnosis inside us, whether conscious or not, that we long to become a tree. We long to become fully developed, fully whole in ourselves, because we have had the strength and the courage to admit that we are not whole, that we are not happy. Right? We could say that we're happy, but it's not real happiness. As Master Samael says, we're not. He asks, are you an oasis of bliss? Right? Are you actually that happy? No, right? We're not happy. We're not contented. We long to be something of actual substance, right? So every seed, every human being has the potential to become a great tree of life. And we all sense that. We sense our inner potential when we are being positive about things and hopeful. We sense this real version of ourselves, real being, which we can imagine, but actually living it is something entirely different. So this is the tree of life, which I've cut off here because it's already profound to get to those heights here, to be with the real being, to be with one's soul, to master oneself at the causal level. When we reach this part of the causal body, we are in direct communion with the divinity above and our human person below. The mental, the emotional, the sexual, the physical. And our internal and external worlds become profoundly and beautifully harmonious. However, we're not here. We're all the way down here. into the subconscious, unconscious, infraconscious dimensions. Remember this teaching, the subconsciousness are those aspects that we generally can guess about ourselves. Maybe some things that we learn from our dreams at night, things that we generally feel and think about ourselves, our opinions about ourselves, things that we could admit to others easily. Unconsciousness are things that we wouldn't guess, that would surprise us and shock us. Infraconsciousness are things that we would absolutely never guess about ourselves and would absolutely shock us to the core. I've had experiences of this where I literally am shaking and shocked that I discovered something about myself that I would have never thought would existed within myself. Right. So these are the infra dimensions, the klipoth, the hells. This is where we live. This is where humanity lives. Humanity does not live in the physical world, in the three-dimensional world. Right. There's a lot of pseudo-spiritual videos online today that preach that humanity is migrating, is moving into the fifth dimension, but that's not true. They say that they're moving from the third dimension to the fifth dimension. That's not true. Humanity does not even live in the third dimension. We live in the lower fifth dimension, the infra dimensions. If we could start living in the physical world, that would be great. We would really start to see a lot of peace in this world. Our physical body lives in this world, but we are in the world of the living dead, the waking dead, right? This is where we live. This is where we live, down here. When we start practicing presence, which is, you can sort of, in a way, it's kind of comically absurd. It's humorously absurd that we have to make a lot of effort and spiritual practice to even begin to be mindful and aware of our physical senses. Right? How many of us now are listening, and me included, fascinated with these ideas, and we're not even aware of just simple, normal things in our physical senses, right? The sounds outside. When you talk to someone and you say their name and they're not even listening, you're like, John, wake up. He's like, oh, because he's not here in the physical world, right? He's in the subconsciousness, deeply sleeping and dreaming, as we all are. So that's where we live, down here. This whole path and this urge of ourselves to come into the light of reality is to walk this tree of life, to awaken the soul. And that requires a lot of strength. And that's why this concept of the seed is so powerful, because it is not just the seed as the essence, but as the sexual vitality and the strength to handle all of the egos that we've created over thousands of years in our past lives. All of the animal egos have the strength to transmute all of that and go back up. That's why sexual transmutation helps a lot. It's very difficult, extremely difficult, to have the willpower to do that. If we really are having the willpower, this sphere here starts lighting up a little bit when we make those efforts. And that is what can control the lower, these four spheres, right? In Kabbalah, even these four spheres, these are also known as the four bodies of sin. The physical body, the vital body, astral body, mental body, because this is what makes up our external person. But from the causal world and upwards is the divinity, to live up there. Okay. So this is the direction of the path here, generally speaking. From the physical body to the vital body to the astral body to the mental body, right? Causal body, and we start getting in touch with the human soul and the divine soul. The human soul is more related to, again, consciously, let's say, putting conscious awareness into these four below. And the divine soul is more of the part of our soul that is connected directly to the internal divinity, the God, right? Above this is the Trinity, right? The Christ, the Absolute, the Divine Mother. Those very pure aspects of creation that exist up there, right? And then this is also the being here, which is not part of our external person. If you ever meet someone who really does have their being incarnated, it is fully active, meaning it has completely taken over the external person, you will never be able to know. You will never see it. They still look like an ordinary person because they still have this ordinary physical thing externally. However, the difference internally is that they have their being, their internal being, right? Many masters have this awakened within them, right? Master Samael is just one example, right? His external person was called Victor, but his internal being was Samael. Each one of us has a real name, the name of our particular sleeping essence. It's sort of absurd when we talk from this perspective that we think our real name is the one that our parents gave us. This is just a temporary human name. It's not our real name. We all have a particular name, a particular sound, vibrational sound of what invokes our particular individual essence. And we can only know that, of course, by awakening it, getting it to talk, and getting it to commune with us. Okay. So, another aspect here I want to point out is when it comes to pranayama and breathing, because some people, many of us, naturally we think that, okay, in order to transmute the sexual energy, I should do pranayama. Okay. However, breathing and pranayama, they do work. They do transmute the energy. However, it works at the physical level. And it works at the vital level. And that's it. That's what it's going to help for. But the rest, we need to continue to transmute, but at the emotional level and also the mental level. In other words, we need to be also practicing self-observation, comprehending ourselves psychologically, dissolving the ego, petitioning internally, meaning directing our attention inwards to the most purest aspects of our being and dying there, literally dying there. Right? My name is Jean. I want to go into my inner temple and die. I want Jean to experience death, true death. Not death of the physical body, but of the me, of the I, who is talking, who has this sense of separation from creation, who is sleeping in this existence. So as we continue and practice transmutation in this way, we begin to become conscious and create these higher bodies. We all have these bodies already, but they're very lunar. They are not filled with light, with consciousness. So we have to create these in a solar way, with fire, with the Kundalini. So they are created with fire, the Kundalini, which awakens, and water, the sexual energy. So in the teachings, we say that the bodies, the higher bodies, must be filled with gold. All right, so some reflective questions again. Is your seed open to this? Is it open to transforming sexually and taking the germ of our sexual energy and purifying it and making it rise internally in the profound depths of our internal world to illuminate ourselves, right? Are our emotions open to this emotionally, right? Maybe when we ask this question, we might start to feel some internal conflicts. We are aware of certain egos and obstacles that we have within us, right? Is our mental body open to this? To stop having selfish thoughts and start to put the mental body at rest in a way, right? Because all of us are sort of abusing the mental body with overthinking. Even if it's to do with spiritual study, it's being overused. Is our causal body open to this? Not just to have a selfish will, like I will do this and I will do that because of my desires to do this and that, but can we open ourselves to the will of our being, right? The will of God. It's something, I admit, it's something very difficult to explain. But in experience, this is something really real, something of substance, something of a reality that we can touch and feel and experience. That we can go around in life and know that we are following the will of our being. But it's not something you think about, it's just something that you're aware of. So just an invitation to reflect on that. And if we are still very confused about this, we could use our imagination a little bit. If we could experience what we're talking about here, what would you imagine your higher bodies to be like? What would your way of being be like? What do you imagine your physical body to feel like? Your sexuality to feel like? What do you imagine your emotions to be like? And your thoughts to be like? What would your will be like? What would you do? Now, I'm not saying that the things that you dream, your aspirations and your inspirations, right, are accurate, most likely, and usually they are not. However, they're not entirely, they don't need to be entirely dismissed, but we just need to be aware of them because also within them are clues. We have some clues there. The zodiac, for example, are sort of clues too. When we are born as a certain zodiac sign, it's not that those things are absolutely true about ourselves, but it contains clues as to the kind of life path that we are going to walk. It gives us clues as to the state of our seed and how it is going to achieve a lasting self-transformation. So in our current state now, is our seed compatible with these higher bodies that we just imagined? Right? And if not, what can we do to fix that? Right? What efforts can we make to put ourselves in alignment with our higher self, our true being, our innermost, the truest part of ourselves, the part of ourselves that is of reality, not shrouded in vanities and fantasies and dreams, but it is in alignment with reality, eternity, right? The vertical, not the horizontal line of time, of memories, birth, death, past, future, concepts, ideas, all of that, but reality. And that's very difficult because there is a sort of pull from the collective consciousness of humanity to think a certain way, to believe certain things, All of our conditioning is pulling us back down when we try to separate from all of that mud, right? The mud of existence. So that's why usually when people start walking this path, they start to feel very conflicted because of the struggle. And the struggle is hard and difficult. The struggle in itself is still a sign of a lot of ego. However, we have to have the virtue of perseverance, to keep practicing self-observation no matter how deep in the mud and how dirty and disgusting we feel in our seed of existence. If we persevere, if we keep faith in the light, eventually we will triumph. It's inevitable, as long as you keep faith. So, in this way, we just have to keep chiseling at our seed. Just like the Freemason symbol of chiseling away at the perfect cubic stone. Right? They keep chiseling to try to create this stone of deformity to a perfect cube. The cube representing the will of man. The cube which also unfolds, the six-sided cube which unfolds into the cross. So to chisel away at our unliberated essence and liberate the essence. As we do that, we sprout, we grow. We become who we are meant to be. The seed liberates. It's like the genie in the bottle. Keep rubbing the lamp and the essence may start to escape and start to work with you and help you and grant you wishes. So we have to chisel away at the ego. Face our karma directly. Don't be cowards, right? Don't be scared. That's why this path is not for weak people. It's for people with a certain type of determination, motivation. It's better to feel like a warrior because we need a lot of will to get out of the mud of existence. And we have to acquire a certain inner purity. Purity not meaning something very good, something perfect. Not exactly. We are seeking perfection, we are seeking purity, but we all have our particular way of being perfect, right? When you look at a perfect tree, it's perfect. When you look at a perfect butterfly, it's perfect. There are many perfect flowers out there, right? So we all have our particular type of perfection. So, as it says here, don't try to be perfect. Don't try to be pure. This purity, this perfection, arises naturally from walking the path, from honestly dissolving the ego. It happens naturally, and that is called humility, humbleness. That you've spent a decent amount of time really knowing yourself and admitting to yourself who you are instead of trying to be something that you're not. A certain beauty arises out of that. A certain expression from your internal worlds and out through your external person. So in this way, there's not much point in ascending. Or we are ascending, but it's a paradox. There's not much point in making these efforts to try to go higher and ascend. That's not how spiritual laws work. This is another fallacy of New Age pseudo-spirituality. That everyone says, let's ascend, let's go higher, let's ignore our ignorance, let's just try to be perfect. It doesn't work like that. As the teachings go, the Christ descended in order to ascend. In order to ascend, one must first descend. So the seed must go in of itself, as a seed does. The shell is used as food for the vegetation of life. So there's a certain sacrifice there that needs to be made in order for us to self-realize. So this is sacrificing to our true nature. The seed sprouts when you, the person you identify with, the person that you think you are, no longer exists. The story of who you are no longer exists. And even if you don't think you have a story, you can't really fool yourself, because you can still observe certain tendencies, instincts, certain habitual subconscious thoughts that solidify and keep you as who you are still. As the person, the ego that has still not died yet. In the beginning, we usually focus on like big egos, challenging egos, very obvious addictions that we may have. But as we advance, we observe psychological patterns which are sort of residues of the existence of our ego, which is still there. So it's when James, David, John, Amy, Sophie, whatever our name is, no longer exists, right? And when they no longer exist, when you no longer exist, what is left? It's a profound meditation. Some children do this naturally when they're young. They ask themselves, I did this when I was young, I asked myself, what would there be if I died? I remember just closing my eyes and reflecting. And I sort of submerged into this nothingness. What would there be if I died? Not just physically, but psychologically. It's always ourselves that get in our way. Whenever we have problems, the ego always seems to find a way to blame it on someone else or some external thing, but usually it's ourselves. We just don't see the option in our causal body to drop the problem, right? Master Samael says, a problem stops being a problem when you stop identifying with the problem. In the same way, when we stop identifying with ourselves, much, much more difficult said than done, it takes many years, then something is born. So no more dreams, no more separation, no more sense of separation. There's no more me and other. It's a profound thing to start to live in the unity of existence. How many of us can say that we truly realize in direct experience that humanity is part of us? It is literally us. How many of us can say that? My ego would argue against you if you claim to know that, because I know how difficult it is to truly know that and act it out and feel it from moment to moment and be conscious of it from moment to moment. That's something very difficult. That's something of our Christ nature that almost everyone, 0.1% of the population has that. So, if we can truly be like that, the seed will then be in alignment with reality. We will flourish in the fullest sense of that word. We will awaken in the fullest sense of the word. The cosmos will trust us with certain powers. We will no longer be some perverted soul looking for power, but power will be bestowed on that person. Because it's in alignment with reality. It sees no logic of temptation. It sees no logic of separation. So we need the courage to live in this way, or at least try, right? That's part of the spiritual path and making efforts. Because the ego is using and contaminating our seed, and we have to give this seed to our being. The being the father of our essence. So this is a total annihilation of every sense of I, me, myself, my sense of person, my opinions. We have to annihilate eventually every sense of separation. This is a must. People who don't accept this are still very lost and strong in their sense of separation because they love their beloved ego. And they think that this sounds depressing, but it's not. It's total liberation, pure and true happiness. Our life and the people around us become imbued with harmony and beauty and love and a sense of what is true in existence. So, if we are detecting any resistance to this, that is our ego. It is our ego. Anytime we feel resistance, it is ego. Resistance is the secret weapon of the ego. Usually when we try to fight ourselves and change, there will be a resistance. And that's Master Samael says that's a secret weapon, because once that resistance comes, there is a big temptation to identify with that resistance. But anytime we try to change, we simply have to observe and disidentify with the resistance. Then we have more freedom. Right? To really understand what is resistance. It is this inner conflict, this pain, this confusion, this bitterness, this sense of struggle and not being strong enough, all of that. We just have to be vigilant, aware, wake up, splash some water on our face, right? Literally and metaphorically. So when we feel resistance, it is still the ego causing us to suffer and have internal reactions and conflict, confusions inside us, pointing to how the ego nature, the ego reality changes, manipulates our understanding of reality according to itself. And we already live in that submerged reality inside the mud of existence. So it's very difficult to see beyond that. And everyone out here in the world is trying to tell us, what's the right way of thinking about the external world? Is this right? Is that right? It's an age of debate and what beliefs are best. But as we know here, the path is about going internally. You can only find the truth within. That's all. The answer is much more simpler than all of those people saying which way to go, what to follow. So to finish up here, transforming the seed, transforming the essence. There's 3 main steps that we can conclude, which the Gnostic teachings tell us. To first observe, right? Self-observe diligently, always, from moment to moment. Even when you're not practicing, even when you're not observing, observe yourself observing, right? Assess yourself in an honest way. Self-reflect, meditate. We have to start developing this internal mind, the mind that is aware of the many mirrors and illusions within ourselves. Without judgment, without condemning, without resistance, without conflict, without struggle, just observe. We can't change what we can't see. Then we have to comprehend. We must comprehend before any sort of transformation. Because if we try to change without truly understanding ourselves, it is a form of violence against ourselves. It is, let's say, our spiritual ego taking over. The spiritual ego taking over and forcing ourselves to be a certain way. That's not right. That's a form of violence. We do it usually because we judge ourselves. We need to comprehend deeply, peacefully, with serenity, with profundity. So this comprehension comes before the death, before the transformation. And that takes time too. You can't just sit down and think about an ego or a problem. you have to relax for a long time first and commit yourself to the path first for a while. Maybe some aspects of ourselves take a week, some take months, some take years. It doesn't matter how long it takes in this realm of time. All that matters is that we are changing, that we are making efforts. So to do that, we have to understand, why to renounce, why to change. We have to comprehend the necessity of change, the necessity of awakening, that it is fulfilling our divine purpose, that would we be happy if we die not even trying? Right? Life is very short. We have to comprehend that. Even this age of humanity is very short. We're coming to the end, literally. We're in a Kali Yuga. The end times, as people call it. And then death comes. And if we want death, total transformation and the force of it, we have to work sexually too. We can't just think that we can work intellectually and emotionally and instinctively and have positive habits, but work sexually. To use the spear of eros, right? The spear of sacred eroticism. Right? Not deny it, but also not to use it for lust, but to use it in its pure way, to learn how to do that. Right? And it's quite simple, really. It is sexual love without orgasm, which is a prayerful attitude to the sacred fire, that this energy that awakens. You might see that when you practice this, if you are in a couple, right, sexual love without orgasm. And if we are single, then it's just transmutation, pranayama. But eventually someone will come and fan our flames, so to speak, and that's a certain fire that awakens. And we can work with that fire, which is also called the Divine Mother Kundalini. It is a feminine force that awakens. The water, the internal waters of the sperm or the semen, awaken the seed, and from the seed comes light, the essence, the fire, the sacred fire, the Kundalini. And it is her that rises through the spine, through the chakras, going through each level, each vertebrae of the spinal column, and dissolving and transmuting all of the obstacles in our spine. Okay, so in terms of sexual alchemy, because we get a lot of questions about sexual alchemy for people who are in couples, there are 3 crucial ingredients of alchemy. And this derives from Master Samael's teaching of death, birth, and sacrifice. But I'm just conveying it here, elaborating on it here in a way for you that might help. Right? Sexual alchemy, when we are working with the fire, when we are having a beautiful and harmonious and loving and adoring and romantic time with our partner, and we engage in the sexual act, but we have this will of not reaching the orgasm, right? We don't want to give birth to an external child, but we want to give birth to an internal, our internal bodies, right? We need love. Some absurd Gnostic students, and it's not that it's because they're Gnostic, it's just their particular psychology. Some people try to get into relationships with the purpose of doing the work, right? The alchemy work. It's like they try to get into a relationship just to awaken their consciousness. Hello, miss. Do you have sexual energy? Let's combine sexually and create the existential bodies of the being, right? What a weirdo, right? What are we doing? That's strange, right? We need love, real love, unselfish love, not love, not engaging in love and marriage and sex for selfishness and greed and strange spiritual ambitions, but genuine love. A type of love where we would actually die for that person. Why wouldn't we die for the person we love? Right? To me, it seems absurd not to. When you are truly in love, you will die for that person. You will die for your family. If it came to it and you had to have the choice, of course you would. So altruistic love, unselfish love, genuine love, before any no orgasm and all of that, and awakening kundalini, forget all that. The first aspect is love. Without it, nothing else is possible. And if you don't have that love, then make it. That's why it's called love making. Learn to make the effort to love the person you're with, to love them. That's an effort that we can make. If we are aware of our egos, if we know how to observe our egos, if we know how to die to our egos. So in another sense, this is sacrifice for humanity. To sacrifice the sense of me and give myself to another person. Because how can a masculine and feminine force give themselves to the other if they are two inside themselves? The man needs to be in the female energy, and the female energy needs to be with the man. Right? That's why it says in the Bible, the two flesh become one. Not literally, partly literally, right? Because you connect sexually, but in spirit mostly. So sacrifice for humanity without the sense of separation. Sacrifice for the other without the sense of separation. We, W-E, not I, not me, but we. If we have that, even before orgasm and awakening kundalini and awakening the sacred powers, the spiritual powers, the astral body, all of the psychic phenomena, before all that, we need to be committed to the depth of the ego. We need it. Otherwise, if you do awaken some kind of power, it's going to be corrupted, it's going to be lost, and you're going to fall more, and you're going to delay your awakening because you're going to make big mistakes. For example, someone who has got a huge bull inside them, metaphorically speaking, someone who has a very dangerous lust that they haven't quite reined in yet, and they start to practice alchemy, of course, maybe they're going to do something bad. They're going to cheat. They're going to be more perverted. We have to commit to the death of ego. Right? And even if you start to create the astral body, you start using the astral body, but you still have anger. Maybe you start going to other people's dreams and you start being angry to them. Maybe you start being lustful, you start being a pervert in the astral world, trying to go into people's houses and, imagine what kind of spiritual powers people can have. But if they still have ego, greed, right, selfishness, anger, jealousy, all of that, So we need to be committed to the death of ego before any kind of alchemy, kundalini, divine mother. We need that as a person. So to be totally devoted to the annihilation of the false self, of the me, of the I, of the sense of self. And then, finally, if we have the first two, we can practice the transmutation, to be committed to really practicing sexual alchemy, to transmute the energy. If we're single, this is a great opportunity to, what's the saying? To nip it in the bud, right? To really start working with the sexual energy and get a grip of it and understand how to live in that way. And by the time we meet a partner, we're going to have mastered ourselves in a really powerful way. We're going to have sexual power, but also, control over ourselves. And we won't fall into something so dangerous. So I've called it hermetic sexual transmutation, like the hermetic seal, in the sense that our energy is sealed, not just sexually, right? Because even if you retain your sexual energy, a person can still be draining psychically, right? The biggest drain is the orgasm, but other drainages still happen. It doesn't matter. A person, for example, let's say, imagine one person, he's practicing sexual transmutation. He's trying, but he's still failing. So he's experiencing the loss of his energy a lot. All right, that's one person. Now the other person is not experiencing the orgasm. However, that person is losing more energy than the person who is experiencing orgasm because their other centers are draining them in a really powerful way. Extremely overcharged negative emotions. So this is more, I think, generally speaking, talking personally from a personal opinion with some experience working with people, I think this is more common with women who don't orgasm. However, they are full of their aura is just, it's shockingly negative. Even just being around them, you can feel it. The negativity of this, the seed is sort of poisoning itself. So we need the hermetic seal, which you may have seen in other videos, the prayer, which is wake up in the morning and affirm, I do not identify with anything in life. I do not identify with myself, with the idea of myself. I do not identify with my physical body, my emotions, my thoughts, my will. Stop identifying with life. When we are identified with life, we begin to complain so much. We have so many problems. We have so much negative emotions, destructive thoughts, or maybe pride gets in the way, all of that. So no leaking of energy, causally, mentally, emotionally, and of course, most of all, etherically and physically. So these are the 3 ingredients of alchemy that I'm giving here. We need unselfish love, be committed to the death of ego, and be committed to the sexual work. That's it. Okay. So sexual transmutation or alchemy should not be done just for the sake of transmutation. The Kundalini, the divine mother Kundalini, the sacred intelligence, which is so intelligent and so real, you can, when you start practicing this for real, you can even meet your divine mother in the astral, and she will talk to you, she will help you, she will show you certain things, she will come in different forms. She is a real intelligence within she will work with you until the end, until you are on that cross and experiencing the same death as the Christ experience, right? Internally, of course. So the Kundalini, everyone wants to awaken Kundalini. However, even if you're practicing sexual alchemy, you're in a marriage, the Kundalini only awakens when there is pure of heart. It doesn't awaken in adulterers, in perverts, in cheaters, all of this. Doesn't matter if you're saving your energy, you didn't experience an orgasm for 6 months. It doesn't matter. If you're still a pervert, if you're still, all of these crazy animal things that all of us humans have, the Kundalini won't awaken, right? It only awakens in the pure of heart. So as we say, Kundalini awakens according to the merits of the heart. And it might sound like a heavy teaching, and I laugh a little bit because, we have to be a bit light-hearted too, right? A pure heart is a light heart. Don't judge ourselves. It's okay in whatever way that we find ourselves, even if we see certain criminal aspects of ourselves. It's okay. If we really love these teachings, if we really long for the truth, we'll change. We will change. And I can say that divinity, God doesn't let us make mistakes outside of the realm that we are not allowed to, if that makes sense. As long as we're committed to the path, I think that the masters really allow us to not make mistakes too much that we can't handle or can't come back from. Right? If you are someone who is really longing for initiation. So it awakens in those who love unselfishly, those who do not want powers or gain powers, those who don't even necessarily want to, be an awakened master or anything. We need a lot of humbleness, a lot of humility, and a lot of sincerity. And if we can walk this long path, this narrow path, right, this razor's edge, with enough humility, I think that we can make a lot of progress. So the primary reason to transmute the energy should be for love, but at the same time, never forgetting about the teaching of spilling the energy.